What would it take for you to hate someone? What does it take for you to love someone? In stories, as well as reality, we see equally intense feelings of love and hatred toward others for the exact same reasons. Or, as George Lucas once put it, there are heroes on both sides. The same actions one side calls heinous are the reason the other side has its followers to begin with. Within this gray area, we have games like 1000xRESIST. When it first opens, you may get the impression it's going to be your typical story where you learn so much about your mother that you decide to stab her at a train station, but it's actually much deeper than that. Sunset Visitor manages to weave together themes of trauma, guilt, deception, complacency, forgiveness, and, yes, resistance into one single unforgettable narrative. You assume the role of Watcher, assigned a special role within your underground society. The world above succumbed to a disease spread by the arrival of an alien race dubbed the Occupants, with the exception of a teenage girl named Iris. Functionally immortal and having dubbed herself All-Mother, you and your society of her clones all work in her service, hoping to one day be able to join her on the other side in her fight against the Occupants. The role of a Watcher is to revisit and interpret the memories of All-Mother through a process called communion. But things don't go as planned, and All-Mother herself may not be all that you believed her to be. So if you want to stop here and go play the game first, which I highly recommend, I'll wait right here. Over the course of the game, we're given plenty of new information to digest, ranging from mildly unpleasant to worldview shifting for our main protagonist. The communion in Chapter 1 shows us that the All-Mother, or her birth name, Iris, wasn't especially kind in high school. Her classmate, Zhao, makes frequent attempts to connect with Iris over their shared Chinese heritage, but Iris generally rebuffs any attempts at friendship.
Well, you can sit with me. There's lots of room.
No thanks.
But we need to...
Zhao, you need to work on your English comprehension.
I'm trying.
She even spreads a rumor about Zhao that circulates the entire high school, though the specifics of the rumor are never given.
I heard what you said about Zhao.
Yeah, you're a bitch.
In Chapter 2's communion, we see Iris's home life with her abusive parents.
When your parents discovered that you had damaged the piano by accident, they hit you. After all, they were still paying for it.
Much like the first sequence of memories, Watcher, and we as the players, may not agree completely with how Iris handles her circumstances, but to some degree we understand them. That all changes in the third chapter. We're brought to a point in time when Iris has first become All-Mother to her first group of 5 clones. The one clad in blue, simply called Youngest, is maligned by her sisters for being All-Mo's favorite. Since her role is to be a Watcher, her sisters play a mean-spirited game of hide-and-seek. As she combs the orchard in vain attempts to find her sisters, Youngest stumbles upon a shrine of sorts left behind by Iris.
Mom, you were all alone.
The shrine includes a journal formerly kept by Zhao, leading Youngest to correctly assume Iris must have been lonely when she first came to the orchard. Youngest finds a strand of Zhao's hair in the diary and, hoping to make All-Mother feel less lonely, creates a clone of Zhao to keep her company. When the scene shifts, something feels wrong. Healer begs Watcher to move on from this memory, but she doesn't.
Watcher, I don't like where this is going. Can we stop?
All this happened a long time ago.
I see you've become numb.
Principal wants this. Let's keep going.
We see a trail of viscera from the birthing pod leading off screen. Youngest is excitedly greeting clone Zhao, whose birthing process was flawed.
Yes, that's right. That's me. And your name is Zhao.
Undeterred, Youngest continues speaking with clone Zhao and, during a celebration for All-Mother's birthday, presents her as a gift.
I hope you like it. I made it all by myself.
Surprise!
I'm Zhao.
What did you say?
I'm Zhao.
Allmother suddenly lunges forward, and youngest's face is splattered with blood. Clone Zhao lies sputtering on the ground. The stunned sisters plead with Allmother that youngest had good intentions, and, in return, she strips them of their immunity. One by one, they succumb to the plague. Allmother boards the train for the other side, tasking youngest with making clones from her own hair from now on in an attempt to perfect the process. Watcher grows angrier and more disillusioned with each passing communion. The final straw comes in the aftermath of an occupant attack that leaves many of her shell sisters dead. Upon Noah's insistence, they go ahead with their communion, where Watcher confirms what she was told from the start. Allmother is allied with the occupants, not fighting against them.
I understand this, and I accept your gift. I wish everyone here would just fucking drop dead.
Iris, what have you done?
Goodbye, Johnson.
In a rage, Watcher smashes her AI companion, Secretary, on the ground until pieces begin to splinter off. Sharp object in hand, Watcher boards the train to the other side, stabbing the Allmother in the back. Principal herself arrives soon after, revealing herself to be none other than Youngest, who had been biding her time all along to exact her revenge.
Mother, you truly haven't aged a day.
Youngest?
It was Principal who manipulated Watcher's first communion disguised as Fixer, hoping to show Watcher the Allmother's true colors. Her plan worked.
Sleep well, Watcher. No. You were everything I hoped you would be.
With that early seed of doubt planted, Watcher was able to see Iris's progression from occasionally unkind to downright malicious. In the nearly 1,000 years that followed her departure to the other side, it's unclear just how many Watchers witnessed the same memories as the player. But for an entire society raised to be devoted to her, those same actions are excusable or even justifiable.
Our life is good. She protects us. She is a god in her own right. You're gonna let all this go because you're comfortable?
So whatever Allmother is or isn't doing on the other side must be worth it in the long run. This is an aspect of their society that the developers didn't expound on, but I believe that complacency is implied. The reveal of Principal's true identity would be a fitting enough twist to end on, but the story isn't over yet. Instead, we pick up 7 years later as an unnamed shell dubbed 48. We learn that after Allmother's death, Principal and Nowhere established a provisional government, with Nowhere taking on the role of High Minister. Furthermore, Watcher's body now hangs suspended in the orchard as a morbid display of what happens to traitors. The death of their deity could have been a new start for all the sisters, but instead, Youngest establishes herself not as a god, but a dictator. Even knowing the pain Allmother caused, Youngest perpetuates many of the same abuses. Unnamed shells like 48 live underneath the orchard in Old Town, where they're kept in line by the High Minister's security forces. Youngest repeats the same cycle of oppression and lies that she'd spent a millennium waiting to destroy.
Principal has taken it upon herself to crash and burn all we knew of life. As we mourn, she is drunk on her unbridled power.
And Nowhere, despite learning the truth about Principal and Allmother, plots against this new system while willfully acting as its enforcer.
To be as close to her as possible is strategic. I am the only one in any position to do anything for us.
Unsurprisingly, the cycle of violence also repeats itself. 48, now dubbing herself Blue, finds herself tangled in a plot to overthrow the government after the High Minister's forces murder her mentor and friend in cold blood.
What happened?
It seems she shot herself.
In the back. No. There's no way.
Know your place, miscellaneous.
Each of the groups she encounters have their own reasons for begrudging the current regime, whether desperate for a return to the old status quo, wishing to put an end to the discrimination against the sisters living in Old Town, or in the case of a society of Jowls, wanting the freedom to lead their own lives outside of service to the Iris clones. In the aftermath, we as the players learned just how far Noah was willing to go to play both sides of this conflict. Watcher was in fact captured alive and imprisoned, with Noah serving as intermediary and interrogator on behalf of Principal. Watcher tells Noah the full truth of what she learned about Principal, and, while she believes Watcher, she still attempts to force a false confession to appease Principal. When that doesn't go as planned, she goes so far as to remove at least one of Watcher's eyes. Noah goes through with all of this imprisonment and torture to stay in Principal's good graces, all while plotting her downfall.
A watcher who can no longer see.
Even though she had her own motives, her actions still largely served to keep the new status quo rather than dismantle it. For all intents and purposes, Principal has now taken Allmother's place, and Noah has in turn become the new Principal. When we return to Blue's point of view, she has been rescued by our original group of sisters. Watcher is in critical condition following her ordeal with Noah, but has been engaging in prolonged communions with Blue so that she understands the full picture. Watcher and Secretary have devised a plan. One final desperate act to break this 1,000-year cycle. A mass communion that will reveal the truth about the occupants, the Allmother, and everything else to every living sister. Only by knowing and acknowledging the past can they ever hope to move forward. But in the end, there are still choices to be made. It is left to the player, as Blue, to decide who to bring forward into this new future. By giving these choices to the player, we're posed the same question as countless watchers, and perhaps sisters in general, from the past 1,000 years. How do we move forward with the information we're given? Whose actions do we forgive? Whose do we condemn but excuse as necessary evil? And whose do we deem entirely unforgivable? The same actions seen by some as worthy of worship and deification are the same that others vilify and seek to undo. As the game comes to a close, we're put in the shoes of a Zhao clone visiting the orchard for the first time. We're greeted by either Blue or Principal depending on the choices you made. You can then visit memorials that give insight into the groups and individuals you met throughout your journey and how those final choices impacted their lasting legacy. There's no way to know how exactly your choices will shape this new world. All we can do is choose and hope. 1000xRESIST is one of the most narratively rich games in recent memory. It doesn't hold back in showing the darker side of humanity, while making it clear that there is always another path forward, so long as we're willing to take it. Thanks for sticking around. What did you think of 1000xRESIST? Let me know in the comments, and as always, play what you love and love what you play.